The morning sun barely crested the horizon when Sarah Mitchell received the call that would change everything. Her phone buzzed insistently on the nightstand, pulling her from dreams of calmer seas and quieter days. She fumbled for it in the darkness, her fingers clumsy with sleep, and pressed it to her ear without checking the caller ID. "Sarah? You awake?" The voice belonged to Marcus Chen, her colleague at the Marine Rescue Center. His words tumbled out rapid fire, breathless with urgency. "I am now," she muttered, swinging her legs over the side of the bed. The floor felt cold beneath her bare feet. "What's going on?" "Got a situation down at Harrington Point. Seal pup trapped on the rocks. Tide's coming in fast." Sarah was already moving, pulling clothes from her dresser with practiced efficiency. "How long do we have?" "Maybe 2 hours. 3 if we're lucky. I'll be there in 20 minutes. She ended the call and dressed quickly, her movements automatic after years of emergency responses. Jeans, thermal shirt, waterproof jacket. Her rescue kit sat by the door where she always kept it, ready for moments exactly like this. She grabbed it and headed out into the pre-dawn darkness. The drive to Harrington Point took her along the coastal road, past sleeping houses and shuttered shops. The ocean stretched out to her left, vast and dark and restless. She'd grown up near these waters, learned to respect their power and unpredictability. The sea gave life and took it away with equal indifference. That's why she did this work. Someone had to stand between the helpless and the merciless tide. Marcus was already there when she arrived, along with 2 other team members. Jake Patterson stood near the cliff edge, peering down at the rocks below through binoculars. Beside him, Elena Rodriguez checked equipment with methodical precision. They all turned as Sarah's truck pulled up, gravel crunching beneath her tires. "Show me," Sarah said, not wasting time on greetings. Jake handed her the binoculars and pointed. "Down there. See that cluster of rocks about 30 yards out? The ones shaped like a broken tooth." Sarah adjusted the focus and scanned the rocky outcropping. At first she saw nothing but stone and spray. Then movement caught her eye. A small gray form huddled in a crevice, barely visible against the dark rocks. The seal pup couldn't have been more than a few weeks old. "How'd it get out there?" she asked. "Best guess. Separated from its mother during high tide yesterday. Probably got swept onto the rocks and couldn't find its way back. Been there all night from what the fisherman who called it in said." Sarah lowered the binoculars and studied the terrain. The rocks formed a treacherous maze between the shore and where the pup was stranded. Sharp edges jutted at odd angles, slick with algae and sea spray. The water churned between them, already beginning its inexorable rise. "We can't go by boat," Elena said, following Sarah's gaze. "Too many submerged rocks. We'd tear the hull apart. And we can't wait for the tide to bring it closer," Marcus added. "It'll drown long before then. That crevice will be underwater in less than 2 hours." Sarah nodded slowly, her mind working through possibilities and discarding them just as quickly. This was the part of the job that never got easier. The calculations. The risk assessment. The knowledge that one wrong decision could cost lives, human or animal. "We go on foot," she said finally. "Rope system." "I'll make the approach." Jake frowned. "Sarah, those rocks are unstable. One slip and—" "I know the risks." She met his eyes steadily. "But that pup doesn't have any other options. We're it." They didn't argue further. They'd worked together long enough to trust each other's judgment, even when it meant walking into danger. Elena began unpacking climbing rope and harnesses. Marcus tested the anchor points they'd need to secure the lines. Jake laid out the medical supplies they'd need once they got the seal to safety. Sarah suited up, checking each buckle and carabiner twice. The harness fit snugly around her waist and thighs. The rope felt solid in her hands, tested to hold 10 times her weight. But all the equipment in the world meant nothing if the rocks gave way beneath her feet. "Radio check," Marcus said, handing her a waterproof communicator. "Copy that," Sarah replied, clipping it to her shoulder strap. "How's it looking?" Elena had been monitoring the tide charts on her tablet. "Still got about 90 minutes. Maybe less. The swells are bigger than predicted. Then we better move." They made their way down the cliff path, a narrow trail that switchbacked through scrub grass and loose stones. Sarah went first, testing each foothold before committing her weight. The others followed in single file, carrying equipment and paying out rope as they descended. At the bottom, the rock stretched before them like the spine of some ancient sea creature. Water sloshed and gurgled in the gaps between stones. The air tasted of salt and kelp and something older than memory. Sarah stepped onto the first rock, feeling it shift slightly beneath her boot. She froze, waiting to see if it would hold. It did. She took another step. Then another. Behind her, Marcus fed out rope at a steady pace, keeping tension on the line without restricting her movement. "You're doing great," Elena's voice crackled through the radio. 15 yards to go. The rocks grew more treacherous as Sarah advanced. Some were smooth as glass, polished by centuries of waves. Others bristled with barnacles that could shred skin like sandpaper. She moved slowly, deliberately, testing each surface before trusting it. A wave crashed against the rocks to her right, sending spray 20 feet into the air. The cold water hit her like a slap, stealing her breath. She gripped the rope tighter and waited for the next surge to pass. "Sarah? You okay?" Marcus's voice in her ear. "Fine. Just got a little wet. Tide's accelerating. You need to pick up the pace." She knew he was right, but rushing meant mistakes, and mistakes out here meant dying. She forced herself to maintain her careful rhythm. Step, test, step, test. The seal pup was close now. She could hear it crying, a sound like a rusty gate swinging in the wind. "I see you, little one," she murmured. "Hang on. Just hang on a bit longer." The crevice where the seal had taken shelter was deeper than it had looked from above. Sarah had to wedge herself between two rocks to reach it, her shoulders scraping against stone. The pup watched her approach with dark, liquid eyes. It was thin, dehydrated, exhausted. But alive. "Got it," she reported into the radio. "Preparing to secure." She pulled the carrier bag from her pack, a specially designed sling that would keep the seal safe during the return journey. The pup struggled weakly as she lifted it, its flippers scraping against her jacket. She worked quickly, securing it in the sling and double-checking the closures. Package secured. Coming back. The return trip was harder. The tide had risen significantly in the time it took her to reach the seal, covering rocks that had been dry minutes before. Water swirled around her ankles, then her knees. The current pulled at her legs, trying to sweep her off balance. "Move faster." Jake's voice, urgent now. "Big set coming in." Sarah looked up and saw it. A series of massive swells rolling in from deep water, larger than anything they'd seen all morning. She had maybe 30 seconds before they hit. She abandoned caution and ran, leaping from rock to rock, trusting the rope and her team to catch her if she fell. The seal pup bounced against her chest, crying out in protest. Behind her, the first wave struck with the sound of thunder. Water engulfed her, cold and crushing. For a moment she was completely submerged, tumbling in the surge, unable to tell up from down. Then the rope went taut and she was being pulled forward, dragged across rocks by Marcus and Jake hauling on the line with all their strength. She broke the surface gasping, still clutching the carrier bag. Her team pulled her onto the shore and she collapsed on solid ground, coughing up seawater. "You good?" Elena asked, kneeling beside her. Sarah nodded, unable to speak yet. She opened the carrier bag with shaking hands. The seal pup looked up at her, scared but unharmed. Yeah, she finally managed. We're good. They carried the pup back up the cliff path to where they'd set up a temporary treatment area. Elena examined it thoroughly while Sarah caught her breath and tried to stop shivering. The seal was malnourished and suffering from minor abrasions, but nothing life-threatening. It'll need a few weeks of care, Elena said. But I think it's going to make it. Sarah reached out and stroked the pup's head gently. Its fur was softer than she'd expected, still damp from the sea. It looked at her with those impossibly dark eyes and something in her chest loosened. Worth it, she said quietly. Marcus handed her a thermos of coffee. You scared the hell out of us out there. Scared myself too. She took a long drink, feeling the warmth spread through her body. But what else were we going to do? That was the question that drove them all. What else could they do but try? The ocean was vast and indifferent, but they weren't. They were small and stubborn and determined to make a difference, one rescue at a time. They loaded the seal pup into the rescue vehicle and headed back to the center. Sarah rode in back, keeping watch over their patient. Through the window, she could see the sun finally breaking free of the horizon, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. It was going to be a beautiful day. The rehabilitation would take weeks. The seal pup, which they named Rocky after its treacherous refuge, would need round-the-clock care. Sarah volunteered for the first shift, unable to shake the feeling of responsibility she felt toward the small creature they'd pulled from the rocks. In the quiet hours of that first night, sitting beside Rocky's tank and watching it swim in cautious circles, Sarah thought about all the rescues that had come before and all those yet to come. Each one was impossible until it wasn't. Each one required courage and skill and a little bit of luck. But mostly, she thought, it required showing up. Being willing to step onto those treacherous rocks when everyone else said it couldn't be done. That's what made the difference between a seal pup drowning alone and one swimming safely in a rehabilitation tank. Rocky surfaced and looked at her, and Sarah could have sworn it recognized her. Probably just wishful thinking. But she smiled anyway. You're going to be okay, she told it. We've got you now. And she meant it. They all did. That's what heroes do.